A reading from Isaiah. Hear, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your earnings for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that you may live. I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. See, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. Now you shall call nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you, because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. A gospel reading from the 14th chapter of Matthew. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down in the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over, the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Grace and peace to you, my friends in Christ. In my effort to avoid the trap of busyness, I've been intentional about reading fiction books this summer. I just finished one the other day it was a crime about AI and some of the guardrails that we have. It just really captured me. I got into this book really quick, and it was just a fun, quick read. But I noticed when I got done with the book, on the very last page, what I thought was just kind of a regular advertisement actually was a little bit more than that. There was a logo that said, "Raising Readers. Books build bright futures." And then it provided a little bit of data. It said, studies show that kids reading for enjoyment in the United States is in rapid decline. In fact, in 2012, 53% of 9-year-olds read almost every day. But 10 years later, that number had shrunk to 39%. Also, in 2012, 27% of 13-year-olds read for fun daily. And a decade later, that plummeted to 14%. And these stark numbers had me floored and perhaps a bit guilty, as I've noticed some of the differences in the range with my own kids. How my older kids would often choose to read without being asked, compared to the younger ones who need a little bit more encouragement and motivation. And maybe you've noticed this pattern a little bit too, either with your kids or your grandkids or in the schools. And I bet we could have a fascinating discussion about the why over coffee today. But that's not why this caught my attention. Because this one-page flyer didn't explore why the numbers were this way. Instead, it asked the question that should motivate all of us to want our kids to start reading. It said, did you know that reading for enjoyment is the single biggest predictor of a child's future happiness and success? It's not having the most activities or being overscheduled or ensuring that we're always busy. But if we want happy and successful kids, hand them a book, preferably something that they've chosen and want to read. I've noticed when I read, I'm definitely in a better mood. It's a break. It's a bit of a Sabbath. It's a spiritual practice. Reading can be a spiritual practice, and it can make a difference in how we are acting. It can help us in coping. It can give us overall happiness. But what if one of the books that we added to our regular repertoire was the Bible? What if we added the Bible into our regular reading practices more often? Let's just start even with the reading that we had today, this fascinating snapshot into the life of Jesus and what Jesus actually does for his own spiritual practices. One of the things that jumps out at me before we get into the reading, into the feeding of the 5,000, is that Jesus starts by intentionally going off to be alone. The first words in the reading, Ken, it was when Jesus heard this. That's a pretty big, ambiguous what just happened to me. What did Jesus just hear? Jesus just heard that his friend, his mentor, his rabbi, John, the one who's baptized him, is that he's died. And it's not just that he's died, it's in the nature of how his death happened. John has been imprisoned by Herod Antipas. He has been someone who is a thorn in Herod and Herod's wife's side. Herod's wife, Herodias, was someone married to Herod's brother. So Herod Antipas and Herod II are brothers, and Herod said, I want you to be my wife. And so Herodias says, sure. More wealth, more power, you've got a bigger empire, I'll join you instead. Herodias does not like John the Baptist because John the Baptist is spending all of his time preaching about how bad it is that Herodias has gone over and joined Herod Antipas. He's been imprisoned for this, and she just doesn't like that John keeps talking. John calls them out for this being unlawful. This isn't how Jewish law is. And Herodias feels like John is shaming her for just trying to climb the social ladder. So when there's a huge birthday party for Herod Antipas, Herodias hatches a plan. Her daughter Salome is going to dance and entertain all of the guests at Herod's birthday party. And of course, she does a great job, and everybody's just like, wow, she did just a beautiful job. That was so awesome. And it makes Herod Antipas look really, really good. And so Herod is so happy with what has happened, he asks Salome, what would you like? You can have half of my kingdom. And instead she says, I want the head of John the Baptist. Herod Antipas made his offer out of extravagant wealth, thinking she would ask for something material. But Herodias has told Salome to ask for something else. And obliged to honor that request, John is killed, Herod saves face, and the disciples of John and now Jesus are devastated that their leader is killed for literally this stupid reason. I mean, seriously, if you're looking for a book with intriguing plot lines and is full of suspense, just open the Bible, friends. You'll be entertained for days. Jesus, though, is grieving. He's gutted. He hears this news and he knows he needs to get away. He needs to be able to get rooted and be able to find some peace. And so he does. He withdraws and he goes to a deserted place by himself in a boat. And while he's gone, the crowd gathers. Jesus is now in a place where he's coming back to shore, and he sees this crowd that has arrived, and they've heard what he can do, and they know that he can heal the sick, so they bring their sick. They know that he can do miracles, so they come out of their towns, and they want to hear and see Jesus, and they are willing to wait for him to come to them and just to be in his presence. And so Jesus goes to shore, and this massive crowd that Jesus sees strikes him with compassion. The Greek verb that was our Bible study vocab word for the week was splagnizomai. That was a lot of fun for them to say, right? To feel it in your gut, this compassion. Jesus, splagnizomai, feels compassion deep in his gut and says, wow, these people need help. Cures the sick. And then the day is almost over, and like we said with the kids, there's not kosher McDonald's nearby. Their feeling in their gut of compassion is now replaced with hunger. And so Jesus says, don't send them away. When the disciples say, let's regroup in the morning, Jesus says, no, we got to feed them. With this 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, Jesus does something deeply, deeply rooted in our faith. Just notice how this exchange happens. He takes the bread. He breaks the bread. He blesses the bread. He shares it. And then he gives it abundantly. Does that sound familiar? It's like the words of Holy Communion, this sacrament, this holy moment. This is a powerful reminder of the power that Jesus has. Even in the depths of his own grief, his compassion moves him to respond to those who are in need. He heals. He provides. He doesn't raise questions about worthiness. He doesn't hold back from those who might already have food already. He just freely gives. And his grace is abundantly poured out, and it blesses this crowd. So the question that I always get in a parable or in a story like this is this a miracle or is this a parable? It's a common question. I hear this all the time. And it's yes. It's a moment to stand in awe of God, like we heard in our prayer lab. It's this moment to realize that, yes, this moment is a miracle, and it's a parable telling us what we are to do. Pope Francis said, you pray for the hungry, and then you feed them. This is how prayer works. We see the hungry, and we don't do anything. The Pope is saying, no, this is not how this works. We might feel like there might be too much need. Maybe we're too skeptical. We don't think that there's enough political will to solve the problems of our world. We might be resigned to greed and that the rich will just keep getting richer. So what can we do to help? And if that's how we feel, maybe we're feeling a little bit guilty because we spend a little too much time just scrolling on our own phones and not enough time reading the Bible, where a message is often a resounding, you can make that difference. That's how prayer works. Our faith makes a difference. So one last thing about that last page of the book that I was reading. Because on the last page, I said it wasn't trying to answer the why, but it was trying to answer the how. What could we do? And it gave a whole bunch of ideas on how we can make reading fun for kids. Like read to your kid. Model reading. Don't be on your phone all the time. Go join a book club. Go to the bookstore. Go to the library. Listen to a book while you're on your drive. Read the book before you see the movie. Encourage your kid to read out loud, maybe to a pet or a stuffed animal. That's an awesome idea. Give a book as a gift and donate books to families and communities in need. What a great list. But what if we substituted our faith into this list? Maybe it was read the Bible, model our faith like those who are gathered around Daniela in her baptism today. Maybe we don't live on our screens and we get out into God's beautiful creation. How about talking about our faith with others? And it's a big part of it is just being here. Be in church. Get spiritually fed. This is like our Jesus going into the boat moment. This is a way to get recharged to go out into the world. Because when we experience Jesus, like the crowds did in Matthew's story, it can be life-changing. It can be invigorating. And it can give us hope in times of sadness and unworthiness. But honestly, the Bible, like reading a good book, can be a predictor of happiness. And it may rewrite our definition of success beyond things that we possess and instead turn it into a way of life. Remember what Herod Antipas did with John the Baptist? Herod lived the extravagant life. He lived a life where he felt like he never had enough and that success was always measured in the stuff. Jesus instead offers the abundant life. We already are enough. But the way to get more is to give away more. Give out of God's love. Share grace. Share mercy. Be the one to forgive. Have compassion deep, deep in our guts. And if Jesus can create that abundance with just a few loaves and 2 fish, imagine what we, all of us, can do with God's grace and mercy. Friends, it starts with us. Give it away. Because we know that God is good. And our bucket will always be refilled with God's goodness.